I was halfway out of my trunk with two paper grocery bags digging into my forearms when my phone rang. My sister's name lit up my screen like a warning I'd ignored too many times. I answered anyway. What? Her voice came through sweet and sharp at the same time, the way she talks when she thinks she's already won. You have 24 hours to leave, she said. I already sold your beach house. I didn't move. I didn't drop the bags. I just stood there in my driveway with the ocean salt air still clinging to my hoodie from the morning walk, listening for the part that would tell me whether she was bluffing or insane. In the background, I heard my parents laughing. Not surprised laughter. Not nervous laughter. The laugh they use when they're together and someone else is the joke. My mother's voice floated in, pleased, and she finally gets what she deserves. My dad snorted. About time. My fingers tightened around the grocery bag handles until the paper creased. I felt a cold pulse behind my ribs. Anger trying to become noise, but I didn't give it permission. Because noise is what they were counting on. I set the bags gently on the ground, one at a time, like I was placing evidence. Then I asked my sister one calm question. What escrow company is handling it? There was a silence so sudden, it felt like a door slamming in my ear. My sister didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing change. I could hear her thinking, fast, panicked, trying to grab a detail she didn't actually have. And that told me everything. What? She snapped, buying time. What escrow company? I repeated. Same tone, same pace. Name, city. I'll call them and confirm the closing date. Another beat of silence. Then she tried to bulldoze me with attitude. Doesn't matter, she said. The sale's done. You're out. My mother laughed again, closer to the phone now. You always act like paperwork saves you. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. If the sale is real, I said, there's an escrow number. There's a buyer's agent. There's a recording schedule. You can tell me the escrow company in 5 seconds. My sister's voice went brittle. Stop interrogating me, she snapped. You're so controlling. Controlling, their favorite word for won't let us steal from you quietly. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain that the beach house wasn't some extra property I had lying around. It was the only peaceful thing I'd ever bought for myself without their fingerprints on it. I simply said, I'll handle it. And I hung up before they could turn my calm into their performance. I walked inside, set the groceries on the counter, washed my hands like this was a normal afternoon, and grabbed 2 things from my office drawer. My recorded deed and the most recent tax bill. The tax bill wasn't because I needed to prove I owned it. I needed the parcel number, the exact legal description, the kind of details liars never memorize. As I drove, my phone buzzed with texts. My sister, my mother, a cousin chiming in like a chorus. Don't make this ugly. You can't fight family. Just leave with dignity, dignity. The word people use when they want you to surrender quietly. The county recorder's office was a low building with a board flag out front and fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired and guilty. Inside, there was a line, a metal detector, and a sign that said no recordings in the lobby, like they already knew what humans do when the truth gets expensive. I took a number and waited, watching people clutch envelopes and folders the way drowning people clutch driftwood. When my number was called, I stepped up to the counter and slid my documents forward. The clerk was a woman with reading glasses on a chain and a face that didn't offer comfort or cruelty, just procedure. Her name tag said Melissa. How can I help you? She asked. I need to verify the current status of a property, I said. Someone claims it was sold without my knowledge. Melissa didn't react outwardly. She just nodded once like she'd heard 1,000 versions of that sentence. Parcel number? I pointed to the tax bill. She typed it in. Her nails tapped the keyboard in a steady rhythm. Click, click, click. I watched her monitor through the reflection on the plexiglass divider. Rows of data, little boxes, nothing emotional. Just facts. Melissa's eyes moved left to right. Then she paused. Not the normal pause of someone waiting for a computer to load. A pause like something on the screen didn't match what she expected. She typed again, slower. Her mouth tightened. She leaned closer to the monitor. I kept my hand still on the counter. Is there a problem? I asked. Melissa didn't answer right away. She reached for her mouse, clicked once, and her posture changed. Stiffer, more careful. Then she turned the monitor toward me so I could see it clearly. At the top was the property record, my beach house, the legal description, the parcel number. And beside it, in a bold status field, one word flashed like a warning light. Locked. My stomach dropped, but my face didn't change. Locked, I repeated quietly. Melissa lowered her voice. That status doesn't happen for no reason, she said. It means there's a restriction in place, either a legal hold, a fraud alert, or a protective flag because someone attempted to do something they shouldn't. I swallowed once, slow. Someone tried to sell it. Melissa didn't say yes, but she didn't correct me either. She clicked into the activity log and scrolled. Her eyes narrowed again. Then she leaned in over the counter, lowering her voice further, and said, "Whoever tried to transfer this property used documents that don't match your record." My pulse hit hard once, then steadied. "What kind of documents?" I asked, still calm. Melissa stared at the screen for another second like she was deciding how much she was allowed to say. Then she whispered, "They used a—" Melissa's cursor hovered for a second. Then she clicked into the document image like she was opening something she already knew would be ugly. Her lips pressed together. "They used a quitclaim deed," she said quietly. The word hit harder than I expected, not because I didn't know what it meant, but because it meant someone had tried the simplest kind of theft, make it look voluntary. "A quitclaim from me to who?" I asked. Melissa scrolled and angled the screen slightly toward me again. "Grantee is an LLC, she said. Horizon Coast Holdings." I stared at the name. It sounded like a company created in a hurry to look legitimate. "Date recorded?" I asked. "Yesterday," Melissa said. "Late afternoon." She clicked again and a new panel opened. Metadata, all gray boxes and abbreviations, the unromantic backbone of ownership. Her voice lowered further. "And it was submitted through e-recording," she added. "Not walked in." My jaw tightened. So someone didn't just forge my signature. They used a service. They used a workflow. Melissa nodded once, the kind of nod that says, "Yes, and that's why this is a problem." On the screen, a line read, "Recording submitted by Seagrass Title and Escrow Services." There it was, the answer my sister refused to give me on the phone. I didn't let my face change. I just pointed. That's the escrow company," I said. Melissa glanced up at me, and I saw something like relief in her eyes, because she could tell I was going to do the one thing liars hate. "Follow the trail." "I need a certified copy," I said. "Today." Melissa's fingers stopped. "You can request it," she said carefully, "but we may have to route it through our fraud desk because the record is locked." "Then route it," I replied. "And I want the chain of title activity log for the lock." Melissa's eyebrows lifted slightly. "You know what to ask for." "I know what my family is capable of," I said. She looked down again and clicked into a tab labeled Restriction Details. A small note field popped up. Her expression changed as she read it. "This lock was triggered by a fraud alert," she said. "Our office placed it automatically because the system detected a mismatch and a flagged pattern." "What mismatch?" I asked. Melissa zoomed in on a small field and tapped it with her pen. "Signature review," she said, "and notary information." She clicked into the notary section. The quitclaim deed image appeared. My name typed neatly in the grantor line, my address, the parcel number, all of it formatted to look clean and ordinary. At the bottom was a signature that tried to imitate mine. It wasn't even close. They got the slant wrong. They added a loop I never use. They even spelled my middle initial wrong. Melissa pointed to the notary block. This is a remote online notarization, she said. Out of state commission. My stomach tightened. So someone sat in a room, uploaded my documents, and did a remote notarization pretending to be me. Melissa didn't say yes. She simply clicked to the next page in the file. And that's when I saw it. A separate document attached behind the deed, titled, in bold, Limited Power of Attorney. My mouth went dry, because a quitclaim deed alone would raise questions. A quitclaim with a power of attorney attached would make a careless person say, "Oh, okay, someone signed for her." Melissa's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is what triggered the lock," she said. "They tried to use this to explain why the signature doesn't match." I kept my tone even. "Who's listed as my attorney in fact?" Melissa scrolled down the POA page. Then she froze. Not a dramatic freeze. A clerk's freeze, the kind that happens when something on the screen crosses the line from messy to criminal. She glanced up at me and said, "I'm not supposed to interpret this for you." "Just read the name," I replied. Melissa swallowed once and pointed at the line. "Attorney in fact, Richard Weller. My father." My throat tightened, but my face stayed neutral. I'd heard his laugh in the background of that call. I'd heard him enjoying the idea of me being displaced. Now I was looking at his name on a document designed to erase my ownership. Melissa clicked into the Return To field on the recorded deed, and another detail box appeared. Return To, Elaine Weller. Mailing address, a post office box in the next town over my mother. I exhaled slowly through my nose. It wasn't shock anymore. It was confirmation. And they weren't just cheering from the background. They were in the paperwork. "I need to speak to your fraud desk," I said. Melissa nodded quickly and stood. "Stay right here," she said. While she walked away, I kept my hands on the counter, fingers relaxed. I didn't look around for staring eyes. I didn't care about the lobby anymore. Because once you're staring at a forged power of attorney, the neighbor's curiosity becomes irrelevant. Melissa returned with a man in a gray tie and a badge that read Fraud Compliance. He introduced himself as Daniel Park. His voice was polite, his eyes not. "Ms. Weller," he said, "Melissa flagged your file. Your property record is under a protective lock due to suspected fraudulent recording." I nodded once. "Someone is trying to sell my beach house," I said. My sister claims it's already sold." Daniel glanced at the screen, then at my deed and tax bill. "You're the owner on record," he said. "This attempted transfer did not complete in the way they intended." "What do you mean, did not complete?" I asked. Daniel turned the monitor slightly and pointed. "The deed was submitted," he said. "But the lock prevents further processing actions in our system until the restriction is resolved. It also flags Seagrass title and escrow automatically." "So, escrow knows?" I said. "They should," Daniel replied, "and we will formally notify them. But you need to act quickly because people who try this often attempt a second filing. Corrective deed, affidavit, something to patch the first lie." My voice stayed flat. "Then give me what I need to stop them." Daniel slid a form under the glass. "A affidavit of fraudulent recording," he said. "You swear under penalty of perjury that you did not sign these documents and did not grant authority. We attach your ID, we attach your deed, we attach your tax bill, then we open a fraud case." I signed without hesitation. Daniel scanned my ID, copied my documents, and stamped the packet. The stamp thudded onto paper like a judge's gavel. "Now," he said, "I'm going to print you a certified copy of the attempted recording and the submission receipt." "Submission receipt?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "It shows who transmitted it." He printed 2 pages and slid them toward me. One was the deed copy. The other was the e-recording cover sheet. My eyes went straight to the transmitter field, transmitted by Seagrass Title and Escrow Services. Submitted by user Taryn Weller, my sister. not a placeholder, not assistant. Her actual name on the submission credential. I felt that cold pulse behind my ribs again, but it wasn't anger now. It was clarity. Because now I didn't have to argue about what she meant on the phone. Her name was literally attached to the attempt. Daniel watched my face. "You know her," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And she's doing this because she thinks humiliation will make me leave quietly?" Daniel nodded once. "Do you want to contact law enforcement?" he asked. "I want to contact escrow first," I said. "I want to stop any buyer from wiring money into her lie." Daniel hesitated, then said, "That's smart. If you stop the transaction, you cut off her momentum." I stepped away from the counter, walked to a quiet corner of the lobby, and called the number on the cover sheet. On Seagrass Title and Escrow answered on the third ring. "Seagrass Title, this is Kendra," a woman said, bright customer service voice. "My name is Naomi Weller," I said, controlled. "I'm calling about a file open for my beach property. Parcel ending in 092. I need to speak to the escrow officer immediately." There was a pause. "One moment," Kendra said, and I heard typing. Then her tone changed, still polite but tighter. "Ms. Weller," she said, "we do have a file. But you're not listed as the point of contact." "I'm the owner," I replied. "And the county recorder has the property marked locked for suspected fraud. Put the escrow officer on." Kendra inhaled sharply. "Hold, please." Music played. Soft, coastal, expensive sounding. I stared at the wall and kept my breathing slow. A man came on the line. "This is Paul Sanderson, escrow officer," he said. "Paul," I said, "someone is attempting to sell my beach house using a forged quitclaim deed and a fraudulent power of attorney. The county recorder has the record locked, and there's an active fraud case. I need to know who opened your file and who your buyer is." There was silence long enough for me to hear his cursor clicking through screens. Then Paul spoke again, and his voice was suddenly careful. "Ms. Weller," he said quietly, "the file was opened by someone claiming to represent you under a limited power of attorney." "And who is listed as the attorney in fact?" I asked. Paul hesitated. Then he said the name out loud, like he couldn't believe he was saying it. "Richard Weller," he said. "Your father." I didn't hang up on Paul. I kept my voice steady and said, "Paul, hi, I'm sitting in the county recorder's office right now. The record is flagged and locked for suspected fraud. I have the e-recording cover sheet with the submission username. If you let this transaction move forward, you're going to wire someone else's money into a forged deed." There was a small pause. The kind that happens when a professional switches from routine file to career risk. "Can you email me documentation?" Paul asked, careful now. "I can do better," I said. "I can walk into your office with certified copies and an affidavit stamped by the recorder's fraud desk." Another pause. Then, "Where are you right now?" he asked. 5 minutes away," I said, already moving. I left the recorder with my packet pressed against my ribs and drove straight to Seagrass Title and Escrow like the steering wheel was the only thing holding my life in place. The whole time, my phone buzzed with messages from my family. I didn't open them. I didn't need their words anymore. I had their paper trail. Seagrass Title sat in a low coastal-style office building with driftwood art on the walls and a lobby designed to make people feel safe while they sign away their homes. A receptionist greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm here to speak to Paul Sanderson," I said. "File on my beach property. There's a fraud lock at the county recorder." The word lock changed her expression immediately. "One moment," she said, and her voice lost its brightness. Paul met me in the lobby instead of making me sit. Mid-40s, on crisp shirt, calm face. But his eyes were sharp now, like he was seeing the edges of a problem. He led me into a small conference room, closed the door, and said, "Show me what you have." I spread the documents out neatly. Certified copy of the attempted quitclaim deed, the limited power of attorney, the e-recording cover sheet showing my sister's username, and Daniel Park's fraud case opening receipt. Paul's jaw tightened as he read. This power of attorney, he said, tapping the page, names your father as attorney in fact. Yes, I replied. And I never signed it. Paul's eyes flicked up. Do you have any power of attorney on file with us from you? No, I said. Because I've never granted one. He nodded once and turned his laptop toward me. Here's our file, he said, careful. I'm going to show you what was submitted. On the screen, a clean timeline appeared. Opening order, preliminary title search, seller package, buyer package, notarization certificate, wire instructions. My stomach tightened as I saw the seller contact fields. Email, my name, then my mother's email beneath it as alternate. Phone, my mother's number, mailing address, my mother's post office box. Paul's voice went flat. This is not normal, he said. Not for a seller, not without written direction. I never gave written direction, I said. He clicked into the identity verification tab. They provided a photo ID, he said, a driver's license. He opened the attachment. It was my license, or it tried to be. The photo was slightly over-sharpened, like it had been scanned, edited, and reprinted. The glare line was wrong, and the edges looked cropped. A cheap imitation of a real thing. Paul exhaled slowly. They also completed our e-sign package, he said. From where? I asked. Paul clicked into the audit trail. IP address logged, he said. He turned the screen slightly toward me. The location resolved to a town I recognized instantly. My parents' town. Not the beach. Not my city. Not even close. Paul's voice tightened. The e-sign was completed from that network, he said. And the notary session was remote online notarization. I kept my face still. Show me the notary portion, I said. Paul hesitated like he hated what he was about to pull up. Then he clicked. A video session thumbnail appeared, frozen on a frame. It wasn't clear enough to identify someone with certainty, but it showed a figure in front of a webcam, hair pulled back, wearing large glasses. And the lighting was dim. The face shape didn't match mine. Paul swallowed. Our notary platform stores the recording, he said. We can request it from the provider, but you can already see it isn't me, I said quietly. Paul nodded once. Yes, he said. Then he looked at me the way escrow officers look at a wire recall they can't undo. Ms. Weller, there is an actual buyer file attached to this. My stomach tightened. So, someone believes they bought my house. Paul's eyes dropped to the screen. They believe they're in contract, he said carefully. Earnest money has been received. My throat went cold. How much? I asked. Paul hesitated, then answered, a significant amount. I didn't need the number. I needed the direction. Where is that earnest money sitting? I asked. In your trust account? Paul's mouth tightened. It was wired, he said, to an account listed on the instructions we were given. I stared at him. Show me the wire instructions. Paul clicked into the document. He scrolled. His face changed as he read a line. Then he turned the screen toward me and said quietly, This is where it gets worse. The wire instructions weren't to Seagrass's trust account. They were to a temporary holding account, with a bank name I didn't recognize, and an account holder listed as Horizon Coast Holdings, the same LLC on the quitclaim deed. I felt my pulse hit once, hard, then go steady. They tried to route the buyer's money into their own LLC, I said. Paul nodded. If that money is in a private account and not in our escrow trust account, he said, choosing his words carefully, then the buyer may have been defrauded directly. My voice stayed calm. Which means my sister didn't just try to steal my house, I said. She tried to steal the buyer's wire. Paul's eyes tightened. And if a buyer was tricked into wiring funds based on fraudulent instructions, law enforcement gets involved. He said. Good, I replied, because I want consequences, not apologies. Paul sat back and rubbed his forehead once. I'm placing an immediate fraud hold on this file, he said. No further action, no recording, no disbursement. And I'm notifying the buyer's agent that the transaction is suspended due to suspected fraud. He reached for his keyboard. I watched the cursor move, watched him click an internal button, watched the status change. Hold, fraud review. A small change on a screen. A huge change in the world. Paul looked up. I need you to understand, he said. Your family may show up with a locksmith or a realtor, claiming the buyer has the right to possession. That's not how this works, but people try. My phone buzzed in my hand like it had been waiting for that sentence. A text from an unknown number. A photo loaded before I even had time to think. My beach house, my front walkway. A bright sold sign staked into the sand-colored gravel, angled for the best view from the street. Then another photo. My sister smiling, holding a set of keys like she'd earned them. And behind her, my parents. My mother leaning in, my father grinning like this was a family vacation. The message under the photos was short. You can't stop it. We're already there. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed flat. They're at the house, I said to Paul. Paul's face tightened. Do you have someone local there? A property manager? Security? He asked. I have a neighbor who watches the place when I'm not there, I said. And I have cameras. Then call the neighbor, he said. And if anyone is attempting to change locks or enter, you call local police. This is trespass if you're the owner on record. I didn't argue. I didn't hesitate. I stood. Paul held up a hand. Wait, he said. Take this. He printed a one-page document, stamped it, and slid it across the table. It was a formal notice on seagrass letterhead. Transaction placed on fraud hold, no authority to possess, ownership not verified. He looked at me and said, if someone is there claiming a sale is complete, show them this, and tell them the recorder's office marked the property locked. I took it, folded it carefully, and slipped it into my folder like it was a blade. I walked out of Seagrass Title, got into my car, and started driving toward the coast. The whole way my sister called, I let it ring. Then my mother, then my father. I didn't answer. Because the next conversation I wanted with them was one where they couldn't talk their way out of the evidence. When I finally pulled onto the beach road, my hands went cold on the steering wheel. There were cars parked along the curb in front of my place. Not just my sister's, a realtor's SUV with a magnetic sign on the door, and a white locksmith van. I parked behind them, stepped out, and felt the ocean wind hit my face like a slap. My sister was on my porch, pointing at the lock like she was directing a crew. My mother stood beside her, arms folded again, satisfied. My father leaned against the railing, laughing like the whole thing was already done. And then the realtor saw me, and his smile faltered. My sister turned, and her face lit up with the kind of joy only a jealous person feels when they think they're finally humiliating you in public. You're late, she said. 24 hours, remember? I didn't yell. I didn't run. I walked up the steps slowly, held up the stamped Seagrass fraud hold notice, and said one calm sentence to the realtor and the locksmith. Call your office, I said. Ask why Seagrass Title just froze this deal for fraud. And that's when the locksmith's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face started to change. The locksmith didn't look at me like I was the problem. He looked at the paper in my hand like it was a stop sign he couldn't ignore. He stepped down off my porch, thumb already moving over his phone. I need to call this in, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. My sister's smile widened like she thought that was victory. He's calling his boss, she said, turning to my parents like she was narrating a scene. Because she's trying to cause drama. My mother gave that small, satisfied laugh again. My father leaned into the railing, relaxed like a man who thought he'd already collected. The realtor cleared his throat, trying to keep his professional face. "Ma'am," he said to me, "I'm just here for the transaction if the seller says—" "I am the seller," I interrupted, calm. I held my deed folder up, not waving it, just presenting it. "And the county recorder has the record locked. If you're not involved in fraud, you should want to see that." He hesitated, eyes flicking between my sister and me. My sister took a step forward fast, cutting him off like she could cut off reality. "She's lying," she snapped. "My dad has power of attorney. It's legal. The closing is done." I didn't argue the story. I asked for the one thing stories can't produce. "Where is the recording number?" I asked, looking at the realtor. "If it's closed, you have a recording confirmation or at least a scheduled recording receipt." My sister opened her mouth. Nothing came out clean. The realtor's eyes narrowed. He pulled his phone from his pocket, thumb tapping fast, trying to get ahead of a disaster. "Okay," he said, voice tightening. "Let me call escrow." "Call Seagrass," I replied. "Ask for Paul Sanderson." My sister's head snapped toward me. "How do you know that name?" I didn't answer her, because she already knew how I knew. The locksmith came back up the steps, phone pressed to his ear, a face stiff. He held up a hand to everyone like he needed silence. "Yes," he said into the phone. "Beach address, seller dispute. I'm looking at a fraud hold notice and she's saying the county record is locked." Yeah, I see." He paused, listening. Then his eyes flicked to my sister and his whole posture changed. "Copy," he said, voice flatter. "No work. Cancel the order. Okay." He ended the call, turned to my sister, and said, "I'm not touching this lock." My sister's smile cracked. "Excuse me?" "I was hired to change a lock based on a work order from a company called Horizon Coast Holdings," he said. And his tone wasn't rude. It was careful. "But I'm being told this property is under a fraud dispute and the county record is locked. If I change this lock, I'm participating. I'm not doing it." My father straightened from the railing. "That's ridiculous," he barked. "We have paperwork." "Then take it up with the county," the locksmith said, stepping back down. My sister's face went red in a clean flash. "This is my house now," she snapped. "We bought it. You didn't buy anything," I said quietly. My mother stepped forward, voice bright with performative concern. "Honey," she said, loud enough for the street. "Just stop. You've always been difficult. Let your sister have one good thing." I looked at her for a long second and felt something cold settle behind my ribs. "One good thing," I repeated softly. "You mean my property?" My mother's eyes hardened. "You don't need it," she hissed. "You always have more." There it was. The real motive said, out loud like a confession she didn't realize was one. The realtor's phone rang and he answered too fast. "Paul, yeah, I'm at the property," he said, stepping away from my sister like he suddenly needed distance. "There's a dispute. She's here with documents." He listened, then his face drained. "Wait," he said, voice dropping. "You put the file on a fraud hold?" He glanced at me like he was seeing me for the first time as the owner, not the obstacle. "Yes," he said into the phone. "No, I didn't know. No, I haven't given keys to any buyer. I just—" "Okay." He ended the call and turned back to us, swallowing. "Escrow says the transaction is frozen," he said, and his voice had lost every trace of confidence. "They're saying there's suspected fraud and a county lock." My sister snapped her head toward him. "You're lying," she said. "I'm not," the realtor replied, and his hands lifted slightly like he was backing away from a fire. "Ma'am, I can't proceed." My sister took one step toward him, sharp and threatening. "You will proceed," she said. "I have a buyer. I have money. You think I'm going to look stupid out here?" My father barked, "Don't let her bully you. We have a power of attorney." I didn't raise my voice. I took the seagrass notice and tapped the bottom line with my finger. Read it, I said to the realtor, calm. It says no authority to possess. The realtor's eyes dropped, scanned, and he went still. Then the street changed again. Another car pulling up, slow and deliberate. A couple stepped out. A man in a polo, a woman with a folder pressed to her chest. They looked excited for exactly 1 second. Then they saw the cluster on my porch, my sister, my parents, the realtor, the locksmith, and me standing there like the only person not performing. The woman's excitement collapsed into confusion. Is this the showing? She asked, voice small. The realtor's face tightened. Who are you? He asked. The man held up his phone, screen glowing. We're the buyers, he said. We wired the earnest money. We were told we could do a walkthrough today. My sister's chin lifted instantly, grabbing the new audience. Yes, she said, bright again. That's them. We're closing. You're not closing, I cut in, still calm. I looked directly at the couple. I'm the owner. This property is locked at the county due to suspected fraud. If you wired money, you may have been scammed. The woman's face went pale. What? She whispered. The man's jaw tightened. We wired it yesterday, he said, voice rising. We have confirmation. Where did you wire it? I asked. He pulled up a PDF on his phone and held it out. To the account in the instructions, he said. Horizon Coast Holdings. The locksmith made a low sound under his breath, like the last piece just clicked into place. The couple looked at my sister now, searching her face for reassurance. My sister's eyes flicked just once toward my mother, like she needed backup. My mother stepped in, voice smooth. There's no scam, she said. This is family conflict. She's just upset because she doesn't want to share. The buyer's voice hardened. Share? He repeated. We wired real money. Call your bank, I said quietly. Now. The man already was. The realtor stepped back like he wanted to disappear into the sea air. My sister's voice snapped. Everyone calm down, she barked. This is being handled. No, I said. It's being documented. I pulled my phone out and called the local police. Not screaming, not shaking, just facts. Hi, I said, voice even. I'm at my beach property. There's an attempted lock change and a disputed sale. The county record is logged for suspected fraudulent transfer. I have a fraud hold notice from the escrow company and certified recorder documents. There's also a couple here who says they wired funds to an LLC tied to the attempted transfer. My sister's eyes widened slightly. My father muttered something like a curse. The police arrived faster than my sister expected. 2 officers, calm, body cameras centered, hands relaxed but present. What's going on? The senior officer asked. I handed him my deed folder and the fraud hold notice. I'm the owner, I said. Someone attempted to record a quitclaim deed and a power of attorney that I did not sign. The county recorder flagged it and locked the record. Seagrass Title froze the file for fraud. They came here with a realtor and a locksmith to change locks. The buyers wired money to an LLC. The officer didn't react emotionally. He reacted procedurally. He read, nodded once, and asked, Who are you? And to my sister. My sister, she said quickly, too quick. And we bought it. Our dad has... The officer held up a hand. Do you have an order granting you possession? He asked. My sister shoved papers forward. Photocopies, printed screenshots, a messy stack that looked official only to someone who didn't know what official feels like. The officer glanced at them and asked one simple question that made her throat tighten. Where's the recording number? He asked. My sister blinked. It's pending, she snapped. The officer nodded once, then looked at the seagrass notice again. This says fraud hold, he said. And the county status says locked. He turned to the buyers. You wired money? He asked. Yes, the man said, voice tight. To Horizon Coast Holdings. The officer looked at the locksmith. You were called to change the lock? He asked. The locksmith nodded and held up his work order. Horizon Coast Holdings, he said. That's who put the order in. The officer's eyes moved from the work order to the buyer's wire confirmation, then to my sister standing on my porch like she could still bully the situation into obedience. Ma'am, the officer said to my sister, voice calm but sharper now, step off the porch. My sister's eyes flashed. You can't? Yes, I can, he replied. Because right now, you are attempting to take possession of a property you do not own while a fraud hold is in place. My mother's voice rose, panicked now. This is outrageous, she snapped. She's manipulating you. Ma'am, the officer said without looking at her. If you continue, you will be removed from the scene. Then he looked at me again. Do you have proof of who submitted the recording attempt? He asked. I didn't smile. I didn't savor it. I opened my folder, pulled out the e-recording cover sheet from the recorder's fraud desk, and handed it to him. He read the transmitter line, then the submitted by user line. His eyes lifted to my sister, and when he said her name out loud, reading it straight off the page, my sister's face went blank in a way that finally looked like fear. My sister's mouth opened, then closed. It wasn't the usual dramatic silence she used to punish people. It was the kind of silence that happens when the record speaks first. The officer kept the e-recording cover sheet in his hand and said, evenly, Taryn Weller, that's you. My sister's eyes flicked to my mother, quick, desperate, like she was looking for the next script. My mother stepped forward instantly. Officer, you're misunderstanding, she said, voice smooth and urgent. This is a family matter. Our daughter is the one who's unstable. She's always... The officer held up his hand without even turning fully toward her. Ma'am, he said, calm but firm, stop talking. My father's face was red now, posture forward, like he could intimidate the law the way he intimidated people at dinner tables. We have a power of attorney, he snapped. She's the problem. The officer glanced at the papers my father shoved forward. He flipped one page, then another, and his expression didn't change, because he'd seen real documents and he'd seen fakes. Where did you get this notarized? He asked. My father hesitated just long enough to reveal it wasn't an answer he owned. It's remote, he said, too quickly. It's legal. Remote online notarization still has an audit trail, the officer replied. And if this is fraudulent, it's criminal. The buyer, the man in the polo, stepped forward, voice shaking with anger now. We wired money, he said. Real money. If this is fraud, I want charges. The officer nodded once. You need to call your bank immediately and ask for a wire recall and a fraud report, he said. We're also going to take statements. My sister finally found her voice, but it came out thin. No one is scammed, she snapped. This is just paperwork delay. I looked at her the way you look at someone who's still trying to bluff after the cards are face up. It's not a delay, I said quietly. It's a lock. Because the county caught you. The senior officer turned to the second officer. Separate them, he said. Suddenly, the scene rearranged itself into something my family couldn't control. Procedure. The second officer guided my parents to the sidewalk. The senior officer asked the realtor and locksmith to stand near their vehicles. The buyers were kept close but apart. My sister stayed on the porch, arms crossed, trying to look defiant. But her eyes kept darting, her body betraying her. The officer spoke to me first. Ma'am, he said, why do you want to pursue a criminal complaint for attempted property fraud and trespass? Yes, I answered immediately. No hesitation, no bargaining, no, let's not ruin the family. Because my family had already tried to ruin my life. The officer nodded and asked, do you have the recorder's fraud case information and the escrow fraud hold notice? I handed both over. He read them, then looked up. You said the buyers wired funds to an LLC, he said. I turned to the buyers. Can you email the wire confirmation to the officer? I asked. The woman, hands trembling, nodded and said, Yes, right now. The officer gave them an email address and waited while they sent it. Then he returned to my sister, holding the e-recording cover sheet like it was a mirror. Ms. Weller, he said, you submitted an attempted quitclaim deed transfer using a limited power of attorney naming your father. The county has it locked for suspected fraud. You brought a locksmith and a realtor to take possession. And a buyer wired money to an LLC that matches the grantee name. My sister tried to laugh. It sounded brittle. That's not what happened, she said. The officer's voice stayed level. Then explain why your name is on the submission receipt. My sister swallowed. I was helping, she said. My dad asked me to upload it. So you admit you uploaded it? The officer said, not raising his voice, just tightening the language. My sister's eyes flashed. I didn't do anything wrong. The officer nodded once, like he'd heard that line enough times to know it meant nothing. That's for investigators, he said. Right now, you're being instructed to leave this property. You are not authorized to be here. My sister stepped back, anger rising. This is ridiculous. She doesn't even live here full time. That doesn't matter, the officer replied. Ownership matters. My mother called out from the sidewalk, voice high now. You're taking her side. She's manipulating you. The officer turned his head slightly, voice cold. Ma'am, one more interruption and you'll be removed. My mother shut her mouth, eyes burning. Then something else happened, something my sister didn't anticipate. The realtor's phone rang again and he answered with shaky hands. He listened, face draining, then said, Yes, I understand, and hung up. He turned toward the officers. Seagrass Title just told me they filed a fraud notification, he said, voice tight. They're reporting this to the state and to law enforcement. The senior officer nodded once. Good, he said. That supports the case. The locksmith spoke quietly, almost apologetic. I have the original work order and the call logs, he said. I can provide them. The officer nodded. We will take that, he said. My sister's posture cracked. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. Not of me, not of embarrassment. Of the record. The officer stepped to the side and made a call on his radio. He spoke in short bursts. Suspected property fraud, forged documents, attempted lock change, buyer wire to LLC, recorder lock. Then he returned and said, Detectives will be assigned. In the meantime, you are all leaving this property except the legal owner. My father's face twisted. You're letting her steal from us, he spat. I didn't respond to him because the law was responding for me. The officer turned to my parents and said, Sir, ma'am, step away from the property line. My sister tried one last move. She lifted her chin and said, loud enough for the neighbors and the buyers to hear, Fine, keep it. You always get everything. I looked at her calm and said, I get what I paid for. The officer escorted them back toward the street. My mother kept twisting her head to look at me like she wanted my face to beg. It didn't. The buyer stood in stunned silence, the woman wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. The man held his phone like it could undo what he'd done with a wire transfer. I walked over to them, keeping my voice gentle but clear. I'm sorry, I said. You were lied to. The man's jaw clenched. We're calling the bank, he said. Right now. Do it immediately, the officer added. Ask for the wire fraud department. The realtor stepped away, already on his phone, voice urgent. The locksmith loaded his tools without looking back at my family, as if he couldn't stand to be near the mess. When the street finally cleared, the wind off the water sounded louder than it had before. My porch looked the same. The lock looked the same. But something had shifted, because now there were reports, names, timestamps, documents filed. I walked inside, checked my security cameras, and saved the footage. My sister on the porch holding keys, my parents laughing, The locksmith arriving, the realtor speaking to the buyers, the officers separating everyone. I backed it up twice. Then I called Daniel Park at the recorder's fraud desk and told him what happened. He didn't sound surprised. "Send the police report number when you have it," he said. "We'll attach it to the fraud case and move forward with a formal correction filing and an investigation packet." I called Paul at Seagrass next. "We've frozen the file," he said immediately. "We're reporting it, and we'll cooperate fully." "Good," I replied, "because my family doesn't learn from conversation. They learn from consequences." 3 days later, detectives from the county's real estate fraud unit interviewed me. A week after that, a subpoena went out to the remote notarization provider for the session recording and identity verification data. The bank connected to Horizon Coast Holdings froze the account while it reviewed the incoming wire, and the buyer's bank initiated a recall before the funds could be fully moved. The district attorney's office filed charges: attempted grand theft by false pretenses, filing a false instrument, and conspiracy. My sister was arrested at her job in front of people she tried so hard to impress, and my parents were named as co-conspirators in the complaint because their names were in the POA and return to fields, and the IP log traced back to their town. The county recorder kept the property status locked until the correction order was signed, and then, quietly, officially, the record was restored to exactly what it had been the whole time: mine. A month later, the beach house felt peaceful again. Not because my family suddenly grew a conscience, but because they were legally barred from coming near it while the case moved forward. My sister wasn't laughing anymore. She was dealing with court dates, restitution demands, and a permanent record that followed her louder than any family rumor ever could. My parents stopped calling. They didn't get a final speech. They didn't get closure. They got silence, served with paperwork. And for the first time in my life, I slept with the windows open, listening to the ocean instead of their voices. In the comments, tell me this: if your family tried to steal your house with forged documents, would you confront them first? Or would you do what I did and go straight to the records, the logs, and the people who can lock everything down? If you want more stories like this, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.